Oh,
probably going to walk.
sorry. Oh,
Oh,
good. Your
now
recording
we'll
is
do it.
on.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is our first community meeting. This has been scheduled as a bi-weekly recurring meeting. So it's this time every other Wednesday starting today. This is a result of folks saying, hey, do you have a meeting? So now we do. And thanks for joining us on it. I have linked the sort of the Google Doc that has our attendance and also our loose agenda. We do have a code of conduct in the project. We are not, so we are a neutral, a vendor neutral open source project following a governance model that is similar to that of the CNCF and Linux Foundation projects that you're all very familiar with. So typically, all of that boils down to effectively, if you're going to say something that you feel like is going to hurt somebody's feelings, probably don't do it. Otherwise, you're welcome to join and contribute and collaborate here. This is an open and free space for ideas, suggestions, and opinions. Thanks so much again for joining us all. If you don't mind, no pressure, but you could add yourself to the attendee list. It looks like a lot of people are doing that, which is great. So that gives us an idea of how many people might like to join a meeting like this, and if being successful and being open and communicating with the community. So let's see. We have just kind of a couple point of orders out of the way. We do have some recurring topics. This is the first meeting, so we'll see if those change. I just threw these out here. So again, welcome to everyone. We have something in the project called mega features, which are just these ideas that we know we need to address. These are basically feature areas of the project. So we'll probably have a recurring discussion of those. That ideally would lead out to us creating milestones. So we're going to take issues and land them in milestones so that we have some idea of forward progress in the project. See a lot of folks have joined here, which is super cool. You are absolutely welcome and would love for you to add things to the open discussion section of the doc. If you have any questions or any ideas or just want to talk about a particular topic, please add it there. As we get into this meeting on a regular cadence, we probably will start having sort of conversations that are worth like 15 or 20 minutes where we dedicate the time. We will have an agenda. So we will move forward. We can, we don't want to get super formal here, but we definitely have a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of interest. And so, yeah, if you have some ideas that you want to discuss, feel free to put that in the open discussion area. And if we talk about it and say, oh, we should actually dedicate some time, we'll put it onto an upcoming agenda. So that's basically all the housekeeping out of the way. Um, so I actually will open it. So as a meeting where we have this loose agenda, I'll just open it first to anybody who wants to raise a hand, have a question, suggest things to get onto that agenda. And if there's not a lot of interest in that, then we'll just move right into talking about the project. Also, if any of the other maintainers here want to say anything, feel free. We'll probably rotate the duties of hosting this meeting. So
I
luckily any one of you who've joined can jump in maybe at some point and run this. Yeah.
I just want to say something. Like first, honestly, like Crow has been around for like few weeks, very little months now, and we've seen
Couple
so
months.
many contributions, and a lot of people opening PRs and GitHub issues. So I just wanted to say like, hey, thank you to everybody. I know like a lot of you in this meeting have already contributed before. I can recognize some names already, so that's really super cool to see like some people growing to be maybe future maintainers. I don't know, but seeing contributions already is amazing. So this is really super cool. Again, thank you to everybody who has already like contributed or like either by opening GitHub issues or fixing documentation or I don't know, helping with keeping our house in order. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, super, super big plus one to that. And actually just, based on some kind of threads on that we've seen on LinkedIn or on Twitter or whatever it's called these days and on other places, I just do want to underline the words that we've written in our blogs and in our readmes, we mean this. We all three of the CSPs that are here, we all were working on this problem, and we just decided rather than to sort of let lots of chaos happen over a year or two and then finally probably find a standard and come together, we just decided to work together. So that absolutely is an open door for all of you to work with us, right? It should be probably obvious because we don't usually do this. But yeah, anybody who's here representing their own personal interests as a hobbyist, at another, provider, as an end user, you are all super welcome to join us. And that's what the governance model is kind of set up for, right? Is that this is a truly open collaborative project. So we're already seeing it. And as Amin said, tons of contributions, tons of conversations, really exciting. Yes, CSPs as cloud service providers, which I prefer that to hyperscaler, which the press tends to use. I don't love that term. So let me see, do we have anything adding into the open discussion? Okay, so I think, yeah, let's just talk maybe about the project. So, oh yeah, Bridget, are you
Oh,
raising a hand? You
yeah.
didn't use the
I'm
animation.
trying
I
to
don't
raise
know
a
how to
hand.
read that.
I tried, but computers are very computer. So
They
I
do
wanted
that.
to just add to something that Jesse said that I think is really important, which is this is a welcoming project. This is an open project. It's a project that we want you and your ideas and your energy to be part of. Those of us who do work for a large cloud service provider, um, and those of us who don't, and those of us who work at some other ecosystem, player or work at an end user company, everyone brings their ideas, and there is no, oh, you're coming from the wrong perspective, so therefore we can't listen to you. There's none of that here. Um, and I want us to kind of come into this with um, and stay with me here, the improv comedy model, all right? The yes and, which is to say, there's room for a lot of different ways to plug into this. So if you have a great idea and you think, I think this is the way, and that other stuff, no, that's terrible. Let's not do that. This is the way. We're going to be interested in your let's make this thing work. We're going to be less interested in the also let's cut them out. They're the past, blah, 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 blah. Like that actually, there's probably a way for them to plug in too. So, like making an inclusive space that works for everyone's needs is way better than saying, we found the best future and we're getting rid of the past. Like, that's not as constructive. So, let's remember that let's welcome people and not try to find ways to cut people out because that makes it harder for everyone who wants to get something done because we're all trying to get something done. So, with that, I'll put it back to Jess.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I think back to Jesse just is going to be back to the members assembled here. I think the recurring topics we probably want for a little while was to talk about what we refer to as mega features, which is basically just an area of the project that we know must exist, but we are not entirely sure how to design and implement it. We have ideas, so I think this is a forum where we will discuss some of that directionally. I think going forward, we probably will establish also a design review implement sort of approach, which makes sense. So these mega feature issues that you can see if you look at the issue list in the project will effectively represent those areas. We probably will end up having documents to review, design proposals, that sort of stuff. So Amin, Matt, I don't know, other folks here, do we want to kind of walk through some of those big picture ideas that we know we want to address? That was not actually a question. I would like for us to do that.
I just sent a link to the mega theaters we have today in Pro. I think we can still like add two or three more because we're talking about them on the Slack channel, but they are not there. But I would like to talk a little bit about the most requested or like the mega feature that was like most requested lately. It's collections. So as you know, like you can do a lot of things with Crow, but when it comes to for loops, there is literally like no way to loop over things or create a collection of things. And we've been hearing a lot of users saying like, hey, I would like to create N subnets or N pods or an X amount of I don't know, like PVCs or something like that. There is no way to do it directly in Crow today, and this is why we're thinking about introducing a concept that is very similar to for loops. I'm gonna share it in here. Um, it's basically what we call collections. You can loop over a range of something and replicate resources under the hood. Um, there is like a few ideas in the thread as well. A lot of people coming from Terraform background, a lot of people coming from CloudFormation background, and other um, DSLs or programming languages. And there's like a lot of ideas we can actually get inspired from, and other ecosystems we can learn from into how we implement this. We'd love to hear more about your thoughts, and maybe should I share my screen for this one?
Yeah, sure.
Actually, I think that's better to show. Can you see my window?
Yes.
It's good.
Okay, sweet. So this is the actually this one needs to be renamed to resource graph definition. So resource graph definition used to be a resource group before. So this still like stayed here. And basically, let's say you wanted to replicate like something like the replica set controller or a replica set construct in Kubernetes, the native one. Basically, a replica set is just a replicating pods. Like you create a set of pods that look very similar. They have the same properties. Well, you could do that in Crow if you had a for loop or you had the concept of pod collections. So in this situation, instead of like putting a template, you put something like a collection, and I want you to range like from 0 to the number of replicas we have. Replicas is provided by the user, so that's going to be injected from this variable in here. And you can see that inside we're defining a pod that has like a list of containers and an image. And actually, this is wrong, because replicas is for deployment. But you get the idea. So basically, you can replicate the pod so many times, and you can have an index in the name in here. So it's going to create pod unit 1, 2, 3 until like the number of replicas you specify. Anyways, this is like the most requested one. We're still looking for ideas. We're of other techniques or approaches on how to solve this problem. And definitely we will like redact write like a design doc to share with the folks around here before we go and implement anything.
But yeah, that's we think collectively we're thinking that's nice pun, collections. We're thinking that collections is the place that the first direction that we go for, beyond bugs and issues and things. Um, Anybody on the call right now not agree with that? Is there something that's more important to you? Or maybe just folks can do animations and say this is actually good.
No, I think it's good. It's one of the features that we've also, after looking into Crow for a little while, it's one of the features that was missing. Would be great to have it there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is, and this is basically directional. There's other things here that we definitely also have to address. And I did notice actually, I mean, there's nothing for version control, I don't think, in a mega feature. So there are mega features that don't even exist that we know we have to address. So we probably will see this mega feature list grow to like 6 or 8 things pretty soon. Then the mission is to, of course, work through them and knock them down. Anybody want to contribute to this part of the conversation here? Should we talk about some of the other ones here? Because it's not entirely clear. In particular, like I think external references is pretty obvious. Depends on is an interesting one. So we want to talk maybe through
I,
what
I
some
found
of the
that
I
one if you want. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I think it's also important. I also wanted to request this reading from external sources, like referencing around the Kube API and then reading existing resource and also watch for the resources, etc. I think if you can have that, that's quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Amin, would you mind, or actually Amin, Matt, a couple other people, you can maybe walk through all the existing mega features and just kind of give a short summary.
Can I just ask Ashan to elaborate on the use case for that? Like, what kinds of resources do you want to reference?
Yeah,
If you
so
can,
one of
if
the
it's okay if you can't.
yeah, for sure. So one of the things, I mean, maybe a little bit context to myself and Joel, who is also in the call. So we are from Swisscom. It's one of the telco operators in Switzerland, and we are taking this KRM approach into our orchestration, orchestrating the 5G core. And what we are building is we are building this modular approach to have like, for an example, like Netbox, which is our IPAM tool. There's an operator to manage the IP resources within Kubernetes, and then there's also another operator, Kubernetes operator, to do the gateway configuration. So we want to build this like layered approach, and there we think KRO or CRO is a very good solution, or like it's a tool with less overhead where we can have this resource graph definition and also the child resources, etc., and then have this dependency to manage things. But for an example, if I want to refer to a prefix or like a larger subnet that's been managed by another resource graph definition, how do I input this? Yeah. So it's also like adding the sort of like the next step, right? So how do we link multiple resource graph definitions or custom APIs, for an example, from your terminology? Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. Does it make sense? So is it clear?
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Yeah.
does.
Okay. Good.
Yes, I think we can talk about that one. Christina, did you have something back on collections, or were you proposing a different topic to discuss?
No, I was gonna, I filed the external references and the depends on, so
Yeah.
I can provide more explanation there if needed, and use cases that I see. And I'm coming usually from a Terraform prism of a Terraform world, and there's some mechanics that are gonna be needed, like external references. And it's like the name is a little bit misleading. It's not external to the cluster references, external to the RGD references. One of the ones that usually I come across is a config map, which is where I know it's like we are moving to a KRM ops world one day that everything it will be in Kubernetes, but the reality is it's not yet there. And we will have some VPCs, for example, or some networking created by Terraform. And we need to bridge the gap. And this is our bridge the gap right here of, hey, I created my networking with Terraform, and I want to drop a config map in this cluster telling me what my networking looks like, what my VPC ID is, what my security group IDs is, and other things like that. And I want to reference it. I want to pull that information and give it to my IAM to know where to stitch the rows or whatever it is. So that is kind of on the external references side, just to add to what it seems like Ashan was going through a similar yet different use case for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, yeah, we can talk a little bit. I think we've pretty much covered it, but Amin or Matt or anybody else, if you have something else to talk about external references, or if you want to look at the issue, we could do that. I think this seems like a good use of our time because it'll kind of set context for the issues that we know, or the mega features that we know we have on. And then yeah.
Speaking of mega features, I think Barney has already a PR for the external references, so
He does.
which is awesome. I think we already like have a initial implementation. I'm gonna share my screen real quick to show what does this look like in YAML, visually. So let's say you have a config map, and this is what Christina was talking about. I want to like share an AWS account ID, a cluster name, a region. It could be something else. It could be a storage class name. It could be, anything in your cluster that you want to share with other resources. And basically, there are two ways of doing that. You could either set in your RGD or your graph of resources, you can be like, hey, I have this external config map that is named default, sorry, my config map name and the default namespace, it's labeled this way. And you're instructing Crow basically to not manage this config map, but expect it to exist in the cluster. Meaning if it doesn't exist in the cluster, Crow should be like, hey, I cannot even proceed with this kind of thing. I need this config map to exist. This is like one way of doing it. And then in any other resource, you can reference this external config map. For example, you can access the region by doing external config map.data region. It's pretty simple concept. It's just like telling Crow, like, hey, you're not managing this. Expect it to be managed by something else. The other way to do this is using cell expressions, but I'm not sure if it's put in here. Yeah, so the other one is basically you can directly reference it using cell. I'm not sure if we have like the full user experience in here. Actually, let me do a quick modification in here. So let's say you have this, let's make it a little bit, yeah, it should be like external ref.config map. And then maybe in config map, you give a namespace and the name of the config map, and then you access some data inside. I think this maybe makes a little bit more. Yes. So imagine that in a world in Crow where you had a cell function that could let you access to external functions and under the hood, sorry, external resources. And under the hood, it will just go and do something like this. So instead of declaratively saying like, hey, I have this resource that needs to be passed with the graph, I can just use cell functions and, magically things will happen under the hood. I think we need to expand a little bit more on this, but you got the idea. And yeah, I'm not sure if that was clear. Let me know if you have any questions or you want me to dive deeper into one of the approaches.
But in the end, this resource or this external config map will also be sort of like watching these resources, right? So if anything's changed to the config map, it needs to reconcile this information back to the or something. I'm guessing that's the idea, isn't it?
So that's a very good question. I think that's another mega feature. I don't know if Crow should be watching all the resources or not. I think Argo already like watches all the state of the cluster, and we've seen like a lot of scale issues when it comes to watching everything and caching everything in memory. But I think we should discuss whether like Crow should be watching external resources and whether it should be watching resources it's managing too. Today, Crow doesn't do that. Like literally, it's reconciling periodically, meaning that if it reconciles, everything looks good, you go and modify something manually, Crow won't be able to reconcile that or fix that unless if it's reconciling again, which is by default an hour. I don't know what you think. What you think about this topic? I think it's very interesting to know whether we want Crow to be watching and reconciling on manual changes to resources, like someone goes and manually edits something. My initial thought in here is that, do we want Crow to be fighting with other controllers? Like, what if you have two controllers modifying the same thing? Will they like be just like watching the same thing and it's like, hey, no, I own the state, you own the state. I don't know really like what should be done in that situation.
Oh, yeah. So my question was, it's more like again tying into this IP use case. So we have an operator to manage the IP addresses, and if I reference it through this external IP or whatever the resource, right, is external thing. This information is managed by the operator, the netbox operator in this case, or the IPAM operator, and the changes that's happening on that needs to be reflected always on the resource graph definition. This information needs to be reflected back. Because if not, it's more like Terraform, right? If not, like you always need to do the Terraform apply and then push the changes. Anyways, maybe we can discuss.
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
separate issue. No, that's
Yeah.
Son, this is a really good conversation because I think this leads to a whole other potentially mega feature that we have to consider as an aspect of how Crow behaves in the face of resources that it did adopt. And then
Yeah.
you have sort of considerations of how configurable is that, you have sort of fail open, fail close sorts of scenarios for reconciliation. Like I think there's a lot of really good stuff here that we should probably just open another issue on. So I'll take an AI. Yeah. Oh, Matt, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying what I said in chat, which is I do think we should talk about, yeah, like propagation of changes. And I do think that there's a way that we could say we only watch what you put, like the names of resources that you put in RGDs and nothing else. And that maybe dodges some of the Argo scale issues that you mentioned, Amin, because I think Argo just watches everything everywhere. Um, the only thing I'm not 100% sure, like, where are the scale bottlenecks and like is API serve like if you have a whole bunch of those, like is that actually worse than watching everything? Like I'm not sure. So we need to do some investigation there.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think we should do like some experiments and understand like, if we watch X number of resources, like what are the trade-offs? Like, can we really like what's the maximum reasonable amount of resources we should watch in a cluster? Um, I think I had a conversation with Justin. I don't know if Justin is in the call today. No, I don't see him. But Justin was saying that actually it's fine to watch, up to thousands of resources. I believe that's okay. I'm just like thinking about what if a user had like, I don't know, 1,000 RGDs in their cluster and each RGD had 10 different resources, and then you might like end up with 10,000 different watches. Again, I'm not sure about whether like this is really an issue or not. Is it like something we should consider when we're building this feature?
I'm taking AI notes. And Bridget, thank you so much for taking notes. I think that's you, an anonymous penguin or whatever you are.
I took a couple, but I think a bunch of people are helping, which is great.
Awesome. And we're recording, which is great. Cool.
I think the watches are like cluster scope, right? So if you watch a kind, that's the overhead you will get, right? So if I think that the scaling limit is on the amount of kinds you want to watch on the API. But I think it's definitely worth exploring it and performing some benchmarks to know more.
Yeah, definitely. I think benchmarking is going to be the one of the things we would like to perform. I mean, again, this is not. I mean, this is not a CLI, this is a control that's going to run inside the cluster. We want to be careful about the features we're going to add and the performance of the controller, and try to avoid as much as possible not having a Redis cache running by by the side of Crow. Speaking of performance and benchmarks, we submitted. I'm sorry for switching gears a little bit. We submitted Crow for Google Summer of Code, and I don't know if you know about Google Summer of Code. It's an open source program for students to join and contribute and possibly grow to maintainers. One of the projects actually we were proposing is benchmarking Crow. So using Prometheus and all the tools that we have today for monitoring and watching the controller performing and doing its thing. So maybe if we get Crow in, and we can definitely like have someone working on this like as full time, and they can definitely like work with the community and help studying the Crow performance today, and what if we add like more watches and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, so I don't know how that works. I think once it's approved, when it's just a matter of socializing it, right? And making sure people are aware. So yeah, tell your friends and neighbors. It'd be super fun to have some students kind of jump into this thing. Yeah, so shifting back to mega features, I think so external references, I think we have proved out that that's an important one. I think we also bumped into change management, and in layman's terms, when we say those words, like what we're saying, or not layman's terms, but basically top down, we need to make a decision on how changes are propagated in instances of resources when RGD changes are made, and then how configurable is that? Like we'll have an opinionated default, but like what's the right approach? I think right now what's happening is a little unclear. So I think that's definitely a feature that will open. Do we have anything else on external references? Okay, we covered collection, external references. Do you want to talk a little bit about depends on?
I'm definitely curious about, like, I looked at the GitHub issue for depends on, and I think it describes the ask, but it doesn't actually talk that much about the specific use case and when, like, what situations you're not going to have something that you refer to in the subsequent resource. And I know this is something like Amin and I were talking about, that a lot of the times there is something, like at least in the case of ASO, I know it's like you refer to the parent in the child by name because you have to set up the ownership. So I'm interested in details about situations where that's not the case and that depends on is required.
Sure, I can take that on. And again, coming from a Terraform world, this the depends on. Usually, Terraform would also create you a DAG or whatever they're creating, and then sometimes you will need an explicit depends on. So in this particular case, I was doing just a bucket with pod identity, and then there are some resources. I don't want to go in that specific example, but there are dependency chain of resources. And if you don't put a cell expression, because some of them don't need a cell expression, like let's say I'm missing the one. Okay, in a EKS cluster, a deployment can use a service account, and the pod identity is kind of detached. The pod identity will depend on a service account. For example, you need to give it a service account. But then for me to get the deployment up and running, I don't need to give it anything. So I'm not going to put a cell expression in the deployment. It will just come up and error out because some other resources are not created. So how we worked around that is like we're going to put a dummy cell expression in the deployment so it waits on this other resource. But instead of that, we know this explicitly depends on another resource. We don't have a cell expression. So that's kind of the situation. And I like to give examples, but then I don't like to give examples because then we go to that particular example. So it's like in any case where you know there is a dependency, yet there's not an explicit cell expression that you're referring to. Or sometimes like some situations you might even have that dependency, but kind of link it by a naming convention. Let's say I would know the name of my S3 bucket, so I'm not gonna go grab it from the S3 bucket resource status, which I should, but I'll just grab it from the name I provided in the schema, in the spec. And then I don't have the cell expression, so I mean, that is probably a misuse of how things should work. Yet I'm pretty sure folks will use it that way for sure. And we've heard time and time again, like the DAG is one of the power features of curl. And that order is extremely useful of creation and deletion for both. So that's where this is coming from.
Okay, thanks,
Um,
Christina. Any response?
so if this resource is a Kubernetes resource, wouldn't it wait for the rest of the things to be created? Like it will retry, etc. Do we need to have
So
this?
yes, it will retry, because that's how Kubernetes works.
Yeah.
So usually when it retries, it starts putting out events. And events are stored, Kubernetes speaking, in etcd. So if you have like one resource retrying, probably not a problem. But if you go at scale and you have 1,000 and they all start spitting up events and errors, you can fill up etcd. So we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
makes
mean, I
sense.
know in the case of
Go ahead.
deployments and pods and stuff, like yeah, even though it maybe eventually gets there, there's also sometimes exponential back off and things that they do to where it's like it becomes awkward because now you actually are taking a performance hit because you didn't run things in the right order. Um, so yeah, that's definitely interesting. I mean, I do think it would be interesting, and maybe we can do it in the GitHub issue to dive into some specific examples, not necessarily like I think we've heard this asked before, and I think even some folks from Google brought it up. So I don't think it's something that we're opposed to, but I think that there are some philosophical discussions here. And certainly, I
Yeah.
know at Microsoft we've had these philosophical discussions in like the languages that we offer. Where like, do we let people do explicit declaration of order, or do we not? And so I don't know that Crow has landed on its position there yet. And so helping us to have that discussion about here are the pros and cons, here are the cases that like if we don't let you do this, like how am I supposed to do this particular case? I think would be really helpful because if we get a couple of those examples where it's, pretty obvious that there's no way out, um, then I think it's a really strong argument for needing depends on.
I'll add them as I come across them.
Definitely a good feature to keep driving this discussion with. Hey, so I'm just going to do a little time check. I had planned for roughly 45. I think we're going to go an hour. I love that. We kind of intentionally didn't put a duration on it. So for folks that have to drop off, I've seen already some people drop off, probably expecting a half hour. Thank you so much for joining. If we didn't catch you before, sorry. And yeah, kind of keep coming back. This has been fantastic so far. I think we have one mega feature left that we could point at. It's the CLI. I think it's probably pretty straightforward. I think if we want to talk about it, cool. I'm not going to press it though. I think it's pretty clear what we want to do there. So really up to you all.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit real quick about it.
Sure.
This is currently a branch in my fork of Crow. I mean, it's not a fork of Crow, it's just like the contribution fork. I'm not forking Crow. So let me share my screen.
There's capital F fork and lowercase f fork. Yeah, this is a
Yes.
lowercase f fork.
So basically, this is branch, and I have this prototype CLI that I demoed this last year with Christina in one of our talks. So basically, there are like some basic commands like, hey, I want to package an RGD. I want to install it from ECR. I want to like push it to ECR. Not only ECR, it could be any registry. It could be what's the other ones? Harbor. I think Harbor is the CNCF version of ECR. So yeah, I can push it to Harbor if you want. It just like talks OCI. It speaks the OCI standard. So that's like the main user experience we wanted to achieve with this one. Can I package, distribute, install RGDs that the other teams are building, like my sister team is building. I just want to use it in my cluster. The other things you can do, for example, is to validate an RGD. So it's like an offline Crow controller, basically. You don't want to like wait to submit the RGD inside the cluster to know whether it's working or not. Can you really like just like say, can you know beforehand if everything looks good or not? It's like a static analysis of the RGD. Like, hey, is everything type-wise like correct? Do I have the CRD installed in my cluster? This is like some sort of like basic analysis you can run on RGDs. So we have that install generate. So generate is a little bit of an interesting one. We know that there is a bigger story to RBAC in Crow. We never talked about it. Probably it's a mega feature too. But the CLI can help you generate RBAC actually. If you show me the RGD, I can give you the appropriate RBAC to that specific RGD that you can use so that you can like limit or at least like restrict the permissions or policies you're giving to your controller. And you can do the same thing. You can generate some dummy instances. You can generate the CRD if you want to look at it before, if you want to publish the documentation in one of your websites. There's a bunch of things you can like generate with the CLI. And the last one, this was Christina's request, actually. I don't know how many times she asked me for this, but she was like, hey, I want to do a get RGD and I want to see all the instances below. So this is what get does, actually. So you can do like get instance and you would see like all the instances related to the RGD. So it shows you everything in a tree. I think it's nice enough. Definitely could be improved. And I see the value of it. I think it's good um, to let people visualize all the instances they have and how like everything is connected to everything in a cluster. Kubectl alone is not enough to understand like your graph of resources and how everything is managed. And hopefully the Crow CLI will give you much more insights into, oh, how many instances I have attached to this RGD? Are they all synced or not? Like, can I do rollouts? This is different, maybe another mega feature. Like, how do we do rollouts and versioning in Crow? So maybe the CLI could help with that. Maybe I want to only like upgrade the ones in a specific namespace and not the ones in another namespace. I don't know. Just like high level thoughts on what the CLI is doing today. I'm gonna cut a PR very, very soon, trim in a lot of the stuff from this CLI. So I want to ship a very minimal core CLI that I'm like, hey, you know what? This makes a lot of sense to ship, and then we can start building on top of it. I think there's a lot of like there's a little bit of sugar like left and right in the CLI, so I'm gonna remove that. So yeah, this is it. Did I show it here? Does it have any other information? Oh, there's 16 upvotes, and I'm one of them actually. So yes, this is exactly what the get instance does. It shows you like everything in like the web instance. You can see deployment, service, and ingress, and whether everything is working or not. Yeah, I'm gonna stop here and leave it to Pogs for comments.
Okay. Implicit approval. That's everybody thinks this is a great idea. I do really like the idea of starting with sort of a minimal set of functionality that we can iterate on. I think sometimes with something like this, especially with the CLI, it's going to frame a lot of how folks interact with the project and with the tooling. So I think it makes sense to start small and to iterate out. That makes a lot of sense to me.
I was gonna ask, do you need any help contributing to that? Like, generating tests or like getting it published to the crew repository or something like that? Yeah.
That sounds
Yes,
fantastic.
yes, and yes. There's the need. There's a lot of areas where we need help. Um, yes, we need a lot of help. There's like a lot of GitHub issues tagged like labeled as good first issues, help wanted. There's a lot of things that are not even spoken about here. Like now you heard about the CLI. Probably we're gonna send the PR and it's gonna need more testing and more features. So you don't need to only rely on the GitHub issues. You can also, jump on Slack and like talk about a specific feature that you want, and we can chat about it, and then we can go from there. But definitely, we need help with literally everything. This project is still a baby. It's still a toddler.
Yeah, we should really be clear on that. We are nowhere near code complete, right? So this is very much us putting out I think we referred to it as an experimental project. So we just want to speak to that briefly. It doesn't mean it's an experiment we're all going to throw away. It means that we're experimenting with ideas that we then hope will become concrete functionality. So yeah, it's not experimental in that like, oh, it's a try. It's that it's experimental in that like, hey, probably don't use this in prod yet. I let us know. But this is not a Docker 0.1 where everything was working and fully baked, and people are like, I can just use this now. No, that's not what this is. So, which is why this meeting and kind of the talking in the Slack channel are super, super important because we're just trying to decide what we're doing. So this is great. And yeah, I kind of just back to you, like, thank you so much. Absolutely welcome to to help us for sure. Us is all of us, right? I mean, that's really the mission here.
I want to add something else. There's another area where we need help is code review. There's so many PRs like getting open every single day, and I just want to say this, like, yes, maintainers can review, but we would love to have external folks review as well. We need help for people like throwing ideas and giving constructive feedback to other contributors and even to the maintainers themselves. Like if you see Matt or I or Michael or Arush or whatever, like from from Crow, like opening a PR, feel free to jump in and drop ideas and comments. We really need like a lot of opinions from a lot of people so that we can get this right.
Awesome. So we're just shy of 10 minutes left. Just wanted to say, like, we had sort of started the meeting here and said, hey, anybody who wants to talk about kind of where they're coming from or their use cases or their interest, please do. I'll start. I'm Jesse Butler. I'm a product manager in EKS, but was a software engineer for about 25 years. I've done a lot of open source things in the past. I did work on OCI a little bit, so I'm very happy to see that commit meme, OCI. I love it too. But yeah, anybody who feels like, and no pressure, but anybody who feels like just kind of throwing out their name and what their interest is, and you're welcome to. And we could go down. We could go down the
Mechanically,
list.
do we want to do hand raising, which
You know
I still
what,
cannot
Bridget,
find?
you boss this. I don't really know how.
Oh, if you want to if you want to intro yourself, raise a hand, and whoever's talking gets a
Sounds
chance,
great.
and we'll pass it to somebody. Hi, I'm Bridget. I work for Microsoft Azure, and fun fact, I met Jesse in the DevOps tools community before either of us worked at the company that we work at now. And this is, I think, one of the themes that we're going to see throughout this project is that we're all building a really awesome future together, I hope. And it'll be great for our employers, but it'll also be great for all of us. So that's what I'm hoping for. And our focus at Azure is very much on let's work with this upstream open source stuff. We want our customers to be successful. And so just cutting to the chase and collaborating with the other clouds so that the customers can get what they want without waiting for us to work our stuff out is the way to go. So that's why I'm here. I'm super excited about it. All right, John, tell us about yourself. And I want to see more hands.
Hello, John Knudsen. I'm based in the Minneapolis area. I work for Hennepin County, but my contributions will probably be on a personal level, although we'll be using it, most likely using it at the county to deploy our self-hosted GitHub runners that are running in Kubernetes. I was having things all stood up in Terraform, didn't feel like the right tool for deploying, actual Kubernetes resources, and had some other hurdles. And pretty soon, Googling, I'm like, oh, there's got to be a module sort of thing for this. I've worked with Kubernetes, but came across Crow, and it was, super easy to get up and running. It's really fitting my use case. Came across a small bug that will be my first opportunity to contribute, most likely. So, yeah.
Yay, super awesome. Ikenna, go ahead.
I'm Ikenna. I work on an ML platform team at Spotify, and Crow came on our radar because we're recently trying to move away from a bunch of cookie cutter approaches that we currently use to package a bunch of resources that teams use to train their ML workloads and stuff, and Crow being or running natively to do all of that packaging for us on the Kubernetes cluster seems very interesting. So, yeah, looking forward to contributing on any way I can. Yeah.
Awesome,
Awesome.
love it.
Thanks for being here.
The idea of you actually using it and figuring out, oh, this does work for our needs. Oh, this doesn't. It should go this way. I mean, again, we have our ideas at the CSPs, as Jesse was saying. We have our ideas of what could be, but what
Yeah.
actual end user organizations find should be is going to be super valuable.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll go
awesome.
if no one else wants
Nick,
to go. I'll introduce myself. I'm
yeah.
a product manager at Google, and originally we started investing in our own kind of Crow alternative before we all linked up together and realized we were basically building the same thing. So just thought, hey, let's do this as a community project. So I'm really excited to see how this has evolved into something that's truly a community thing.
Love it. Awesome. And we're almost out of time, but I'm just going to pick on my colleague Matthew and say, hey, Matthew, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Matt. I also work at Microsoft with Bridget. I'm actually on the AKS team, but mostly do stuff in open source. So I'm a maintainer of Azure Service Operator. And yeah, I do some other stuff in open source as well. And yeah, really excited to be here. And it's really cool to see all three cloud providers working together. It's not something that you see every day.
Okay, we're just about at time, so I'm going to hand it back to Amin and Jesse to bring us home.
I just want to say thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think people have dropped off. We still have 14 people. So hanging in for an hour to talk about this new project, amazing. Really looking forward to future meetings where we're going to dig into some details. Hopefully we'll get some designs to review. You folks, showing up is a big part of why we're doing this. If we wanted to just get in a room and build something and ship it to you, we'd have done it. But we knew that wasn't the mission. This isn't about cloud resources. This is about kind of furthering Kubernetes capabilities. And we think that this is a really cool project that we're all able to collaborate on and move the ball forward. So super excited. Thanks again for all of you coming and being here and being part of it. Cool. All right, we'll get back a minute and a half. See
All
you
right.
all on Slack. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. If this becomes something where we want to maybe do it weekly, we can think about having alternating times, especially maybe something that's even friendlier for Europe. But yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Take
Thank you,
care.
folks. Take care.
Thanks, bye.